There was a time when America trusted one wood with the jobs that could not fail. Ships, barrels, barns, bridges, homes, floors built to outlive the people walking on them. Not because it looked expensive, not because it was trendy, because it worked. And that is what makes this story so strange. Because if white oak was really that good, strong, durable, water-resistant, proven over generations, then why did America stop using it the way it once did? Why did a material that framed the nation's infrastructure, that held its most valuable commodities, and that formed the very decks of its warships, suddenly fall out of common use? Why did one of the most trusted woods in the country go from essentially gut to selective? From the everyday material of shipwrights, farmers and builders, to something people now mostly associate with high-end flooring, whiskey barrels and painstaking restoration work. That is the mystery. And it's a question that reveals a fundamental shift in how we think about building, and even time itself. And the answer is bigger than wood. Because history does not always preserve the best materials. It often preserves the fastest ones, the cheapest ones, the easiest ones to scale. And in the story of American progress, speed became a virtue that overshadowed almost everything else, including permanence. White oak may be one of the clearest examples of that trade-off in American building history. It's a story of quality versus quantity, of craft versus convenience. To understand why it faded, you first have to understand why people trusted it so much in the first place. White oak was not just good lumber. That undersells it. This was a serious working wood, a structural material chosen for its inherent integrity. A wood people reached for when failure would cost real money or even lives. When water was a constant threat. When immense weight had to be supported for centuries. When strength mattered above all else. When the thing being built actually had to last. And one of its biggest advantages was hidden inside the wood itself, a microscopic feature with macroscopic consequences. White oak has a cellular structure that makes it far more resistant to water penetration than many other hardwoods. As the tree grows, its vascular tissues, the pores you see in the end grain, become plugged with balloon-like growths called tyloses. These effectively seal the wood from the inside out, creating a naturally waterproof barrier. That one detail gave it an edge that changed everything. It meant white oak performed better around moisture than its close cousin, red oak, whose pores remain open. Try to make a barrel from red oak, and it will weep. It meant coopers, the craftsmen who made barrels, could rely on it to hold liquid, not just stay together. Hold liquid, for months, for years, for decades. That is rare. It's a superpower among woods. And once a wood can do that, its value expands fast. Suddenly, it's not just a building material, it's a vessel, it's a technology. Now it is useful for barrels, containing everything from water and wine to whiskey and saltfish. For shipbuilding, where the hull of the USS Constitution, Old Ironsides, famously repelled cannonballs thanks to its dense white oak planking. For wagon parts, especially wheel hubs and spokes that had to endure constant shock and moisture. For heavy framing in barns and mills, where its rot resistance was critical. For agricultural structures like fence posts and water troughs. For flooring tough enough to take decades of punishment from boots, barrels and machinery. So when people say white oak helped build America, that is not poetic exaggeration. It is practical truth. This was a wood with a reputation built the old-fashioned way, thorough repetition, a barrel that did not leak, a floor that did not wear through, a beam that held, a frame that stayed stable, a structure that kept doing its job long enough to become someone else's inheritance. That is how a material becomes trusted, not through marketing, through proof. So if white oak had all of that going for it, what changed? The simplest answer is this. America changed what it wanted from wood. For a long time, building was slower, more local, more regional, more willing to work with the material instead of forcing the material to fit a national system. A builder knew the woods on their land, and they knew how to use them. And that matters, because white oak is exceptional. But exceptional is not the same thing as easy. It is heavy. A freshly cut log is saturated with water, making it incredibly difficult to move. It is dense. Its tightly packed fibers provide strength, but fight every cut of a saw. It is hard. It dulls tools faster than pine or fir. It is tougher to machine than softer, faster-growing species. It takes a long, slow time to dry properly. Rush it, and the wood will crack and check, ruining its value. It does not naturally fit a world obsessed with speed. And eventually, speed became the whole game. As American construction industrialized after the Civil War and into the 20th century, the priorities shifted. The balloon frame, built with lightweight, standardized lumber, transformed housing. Railroads needed to be built quickly across vast distances. Cities grew at an explosive rate. Builders wanted wood that was easier to mill, easier to dry, easier to transport, easier to standardize, easier to frame with quickly, easier to buy in massive, predictable volume. And that wood was not white oak. It was Douglas fir. It was southern yellow pine. Softwoods. They grew fast, were lighter, and could be processed and shipped at a scale that oak could never match. And that is why white oak became something almost symbolic. A wood of permanence in an age of turnover. A wood of craftsmanship in an age of speed. A wood that still signals seriousness, even if it no longer defines the average build. You can hear that shift in the way people talk about it. Nobody gets excited when a building goes up quickly with generic materials. That is normal now. That's just the baseline expectation of modern efficiency. But say white oak, and the reaction changes. White oak floors, a white oak staircase, a white oak timber frame. It sounds solid, intentional, expensive, almost moral, because deep down, people still associate it with something that feels increasingly rare. The idea that things should be made to last. And that may be the real reason this story hits harder than it seems like it should. It's not just about a species of tree. It's about a philosophy of making, a respect for materials, and a connection to a past where the things we built were meant to endure long after we were gone.